Hi again. This is Gary. This is the second video number 2. We just got done defining culture. What I wanted to do now is break down culture into two kind of categories: material and non-material culture. Material culture is all of the tangible stuff that we create in our society. And so this is all the stuff that you are that you deal with, your technology, your clothing, basically what we call artifacts. Usually when we think of the term artifact, we think of archaeologists digging up like an old clay pot or something like that, or arrowheads, but actually the term artifact refers to the idea that of anything that is made by humans, anything that's not naturally occurring. So everything that is an artifact, anything that is created by people, is a part of material culture. We think of our technology, our clothing, our homes, our cars, everything that we create, and these are all part of material culture. And they're not just things in a world of dead things. These are things that we imbue with meaning, symbolic meaning. So that's why they're part of culture. Also, there's non-material culture, and this is sort of all the other stuff, the stuff that's intangible, the intangible world of ideas. And so this involves all of the things we're going to be talking about, like values, norms, symbols, language, and belief systems. So we'll talk about each one of those. So this is kind of the breakdown of the two different areas, main areas of culture. Now, a couple of other terminology ideas which I'll just talk about quickly. One is culture shock. Culture shock is what happens when you're sort of out of your element. If you travel from one culture to another, what you'll find is that sometimes the symbols that are used, meaning the names for things, the gestures, language, all of those things are maybe different, and so you may feel very out of your element. You may feel very disoriented, and on top of that, the rules for everyday living may be different. So, but that doesn't necessarily have to be if you move from one culture to another. Sometimes even within the same culture, you can find, especially in a very diverse culture like ours, you could, if you were in a small town, if you grew up in a small town in Iowa, and you've never been anywhere else, if you go from rural Iowa to the deep South, or to the East Coast or the West Coast, you're going to find that things are different, that the way people do things may be different, and the way that they talk may be different, and the way that the kind of the rules for engagement may be different. I remember when I moved from Denver to here, I thought it was very strange. I'd walk down the street and people would smile and say hi to me, and I was like, what the hell? Do I even know these people? Why are they saying hi to me? And of course that was just a thing. It's an Iowa thing, being nice and being polite and saying hi to people you don't even know. First time I ever drove out in the middle of nowhere, in the boonies, people would, every car that would go by, every truck would wave to me, and I'm like, oh, what the heck, am I going to start hearing banjo music and end up in like Deliverance or something like that? So I got used to that. I realized that that I had to get used to a kind of a different way of doing things in Iowa than how we did things in a much larger city. Another two concepts: ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Ethnocentrism, for those of you who took psychology, you probably talked about egocentrism, right? The egocentrism is for example, people that have narcissistic personality disorder, where they're really self-focused, right? They're really all about them, and to the point where it's a mental illness. Ethnocentrism is similar to that. It's like thinking of your own culture not as just a good culture or even the number one culture, like we're the best culture, but even beyond that, to thinking about your culture as being the right culture, the correct one, meaning implying that all other cultures are incorrect. Now, it's important to kind of recognize that what we're doing, in effect, is trying to measure other cultures like it's a yardstick, right? Measuring other cultures against ours, assuming that ours is correct, and that if they're different than us, then they must be wrong. It's a very biased way of looking at the world, and in the past, it's especially for Western and Northern Europeans, and then of course for us in America, this has led to some really negative outcomes. It led to colonialism. It led to things like slavery. It ended in, it resulted in some really bad stuff with Native Americans, because you assume, well, obviously these people are, savages, and so it's okay for us to pretty much do anything we want to do to them. So ethnocentrism is a very biased way of looking at the world, assuming that your culture is correct. And the problem with all these other cultures that are different is they're just not enough like us. Cultural relativism is a more accurate way of looking at things. What it means is that looking at culture as though culture is not right or wrong. Culture is simply culture. And there is no right or wrong culture, there's just culture. Around the world, there's just a lot of different ways to do things. And some cultures do things very differently than others. But that doesn't necessarily make them wrong, it just makes them different. And in fact, we can actually learn a lot by understanding other cultures, because it allows us to get outside of our own comfort zone. It allows us to think about the world differently by seeing the world through other people's eyes. And that actually makes us better problem solvers. It makes us smarter. It makes us be able to be more creative, because we can see things from a much broader perspective. This is another example of the kind of the sociological imagination as well, allowing us to see things from other people's perspective. So when we talk about diversity, this is a good example of how diversity plays out in ways that gives us advantages if we in fact embrace diversity, because we're not just thinking about the world from our own perspective, we're looking at it from the perspective of others as well. So this is the end of this video, and what we'll talk about next is symbols. All right, thank you.
Turn replay.